Welcome to the Hydra.
Yes, the Hydra. So let's get right into the basics. I will begin. They are huge reptilian monsters with the body of, I would say...
Like a turtle without a shell.
Okay, that's interesting. Turtle without a shell.
Kind of like a boxy reptile. Well, kind of like a triceratops body.
Yeah.
You know how they kind of like...
It's kind of crocodile, but upraised. You know how their stomach drags?
Yeah.
Hydra stomachs don't drag.
Yeah.
They're up.
They're kind of bulky, thick.
So they got the body of what we just said.
Yes.
But what makes them quite unique is that coming from that body is any number of long necks with a dragon-like head at the top, or perhaps serpent-like head, some sort of reptilian head at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are long necks, kind of, I would describe it. What is it, a plesiosaur?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like a plesiosaur, Elsmosaur.
I did not research that. That came right out of my mind.
That was good.
So a plesiosaur, it's that sea monster, prehistoric sea creature that's, got the flippers, but it's got the long neck, and at the end it's got that just like snapper jaw.
And I mean, Hydras, like, compared to a plesiosaur, Hydras have them thick necks. They're massive, they got, like, their necks are probably big as a person, like, thick-wise.
Yeah, I guess imagine, so you got the body we described, like crocodile kind of, and then coming from that can be any number from, like, 1 to, like, 30, like, anacondas. Like, imagine just, like, a thick snake, and then just at the end is a big, thick head. Like, a big, like, dragon. Bam! At the end. So, that might paint a picture. Their tails... Sometimes they have one, sometimes they have multiple tails.
They have like 8 or like
8
16.
Tails. So what we're getting here is there's this creature that has all these necks. A bunch of necks. More necks than it needs. Okay. So, yes.
What do you want me to...
Typically 5 heads, though.
Normally when a Hydra is born, they normally have 5 heads. So,
yeah.
But
they can lose and... grow more, which we will get into.
Yes, we will talk about that. It's actually very interesting. But you might think, what are their colors? So, normal Hydras, which are the common Hydras, who actually don't regrow heads.
Maybe we shouldn't get into the types of Hydras yet, but you can totally throw out colors if you want.
Yeah, so basically the colors are normal Hydras and the regenerative Hydras. Normally the Hydras that you'll fight, they'll be like a tannish, like greenish, very, dinosaur-y colors.
Yeah.
But then there are the rare ones, which we'll talk about, which can be bright red or dark purple.
And those colors are kind of like
a cousin.
You know how frogs can be brightly colored to warn off, like they're poisonous? Those colors will be symbols of something different about them. So if they have bright, streaks of red... that means there's something different about them, and we'll get into what that is.
So they actually have a range of different colors. If you want us to describe their jaw or their heads, so think of like a crocodilian draconic head, and they have piercing yellow, deep red for the red Hydras, or a dark deep blue, which is very
their eyes.
Their eyes. Yeah. And they also have raggedy teeth, and normally some of them have 2 big fangs. So it's kind of interesting.
You can get serpent vibes.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that's what they look like. Quick basics on their personality. So in essence, they are just these large alpha predators.
Apex predators.
Apex predators, but not just a regular apex predator. An apex predator that is ultra hungry. So everything they do is driven by hunger.
There's actually a scientific name for that, right? It's
I know. We talked about this with goblins a little bit. So there's the animals that just...
ultra starvation. Basically, they're always in a state of starving. They're always starving. Nothing can satisfy their hunger.
All right, let's pause. Yeah, okay, good. So that's basic. We'll get more into that. But for now, let's move on to stats.
Yeah, so I can start off with stats. They're kind of scary. So for their challenge rating, remember challenge rating is kind of iffy, but they're normally at an 8, which is pretty high.
Yep.
But so for the general stats, their AC is a 15, reasonably good for just a natural, well, not natural, but reasonably good for a creature with its normal hide.
Well, it's natural armor.
Yeah, it's natural armor. So it actually has pretty good natural armor. Its average HP is 172 hit points. Pretty tanky.
Yep, pretty tanky.
Their speed is 30, and they can swim also 30 speed. So don't think about...
They are aquatic as well. And, and speaking of hit points, they actually are huge. They're huge. So they're not like crocodile size. Like they're really big.
They're like 30 feet long, I would think.
So that makes them
15
more
feet tall.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure the dimensions. Whatever huge is.
A giant is huge, and they can be up to like 15 to 20 feet tall.
Okay.
So I would kind of think of this as like a small sauropod dinosaur.
Right. Okay.
Kind of like 60
And they're
feet
2 orders bigger than a medium player, which is the average size of a player. And so that means they can move right through them whenever they want.
Oh, yeah, they can just flick people out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we get to their general stats, their strength, they're another brute monster. Their strength is a +5.
Yep.
That's really strong. Their dexterity, surprisingly for their bulky size, is a +1. I thought that was kind of
cool. They're not very dexterous, but... They are just big.
Yeah, so I guess they can just move.
They can just move. And they got, long legs and stuff like that.
Their constitution is a +5, so also very high. What they're lacking at is their intelligence, which is a -4, which is pretty bad.
Terrible.
Horrible
it's
intelligence.
Nearly an inanimate object. It's nearly like a flower.
Literally one step down from basically not sentient. But I guess their wisdom is a +0, so just general wisdom. And then their charisma, I don't really know why you would think they're charismatic, but they got a -2.
-2, which is honestly higher than is
expected. What I thought, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they have, to add on to that, they have a lot of heads, as we described. So they got a perception of +6, so a lot of eyes to look around.
Oh, yeah.
They have dark vision of 60 feet. That's just basic. Passive perception of 16. Which is pretty high, and they speak no languages, because they are just a beast. No languages whatsoever.
Yeah, very animalistic.
Yes. In terms of what they can, so they have abilities. Before we get into their abilities, do you want to just do attacks, or do you...
I can do attacks.
Right.
So they can, pretty simple, they bite you.
Yeah, they only have bite attacks.
They only have bite, which you might think, what, don't they have, like, big claws and, like, a tail? It's like... Well, they're kind of big and chunky, so they can't really reach you. Plus, they have a bajillion heads. So,
imagine an alligator trying to claw you. Like, the body just doesn't make sense. Yeah. It can't do it. It's too heavy.
So the one scary thing about the Hydra's attacks is it can attack with as many heads as it has.
Yeah.
So, technically, when you're just fighting a normal Hydra, it can attack you 5 times.
Yep.
And the damage isn't outstanding, but still, 5 times is crazy.
Yeah, 1 bite does 10 piercing damage. So
1d10 plus 5.
1d10 plus 1, so on average 10. And so with 5 heads, that can do 50 damage on average per turn. But again, these heads there can be more than 5.
Yeah. Also, isn't their reach 10 feet? Like they can outreach people.
Their reach is 10 feet.
They can just hide behind stuff and like poke you. They're probably not that smart, but.
Yeah, but it can be done. Okay, so I'll get into their abilities here. So the simple ones is they are aquatic, so they can hold their breath for 1 hour. So they're like an alligator where they breathe oxygen. So they breathe air. Fish also breathe oxygen, but so they breathe air. So they do have to hold their breath to go in the water, but they're fully capable of doing it for up to an hour. And in order to breathe, they actually only need 1 head out of the water. So
that they kind of have like a little snorkel. One guy pops up, takes a breath, and you're like, what the heck was that?
Yeah, or it's like just the Loch Ness Monster, and then all of a sudden it's like, boop, 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 boop.
Yep,
a whole pack of them. But yeah. Okay, so they hold their breath. It's all about their heads, this monster. So one of their abilities is reactive heads.
Which is actually really strong.
Which is really strong, and what the ability gives them is 1 reaction per head they have, extra. So that means if you as a player don't disengage, you could have 5 heads reacting to you and getting opportunity attacks.
So basically, don't run away unless you
make sure you use disengage. Yeah. Okay, another one, this again is linked to their many heads, is wakeful. So while asleep, 1 head is always awake.
Rip that head.
So you can't catch them asleep really, because unless.
Well, I mean, basically, you can't I don't think you can put them to sleep with sleeping magic. I guess. Would that nullify that? Because one head's gonna be like, I'm awake. Yeah, nice try.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, does that nullify the?
I mean, as the stats go, it says while asleep, one head is awake. So technically, it would always have one awake.
And actually, the cool thing about the whole breath and the wakefulness. So let's say you put let's say a poison cloud on them. I don't know why you would do that. Literally, one head just has to reach above the poison cloud.
Oh, and breathe.
And it can just breathe, while the other ones can just hold their breath. Or
it doesn't matter whether it's water or whatever.
Yeah, literally, it can just hold its breath.
It can hold its breath for up to an hour. Okay, and so here is their big ability that has multiple consequences, and it's called
many heads.
Multiple heads. That's what it's called. Shocker. Okay, so what this is it says it has 5 heads, but it also says that because of its 5 heads, it has advantage on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and put unconscious. Because if you blind one head, it's got 4 others to use. So it doesn't work that way.
So you can still charm it, though, technically.
You can still charm it technically, but it has advantage. You can do any of those things technically, but it has advantage.
Huh.
Okay, but here is the real power. So, 25 damage in one turn done to the Hydra kills one of its heads. That's how it works. So... Right, if the whole party collectively does 25 damage in a turn, it will lose a head. But that is not necessarily a good thing. So when it loses a head, it grows 2 more heads per how many have been killed. So if the party does 25 damage and kills 1 head, the next turn, 2 more will pop up. And if they kill 2 heads, 4 more will pop up, right? So this is classic Hydra stuff. If you know anything about the Hydra... That's their
Greek mythology. Yeah, that's kind of
and so this is kind of how that works. But mechanically speaking, every time they gain a new head,
they get 20.
They get 10 HP. But when they gain, they're never going to gain 1 head. They're always going to gain 2, right?
So it's at 20 basically.
It's basically at 20.
So basically,
per head they gain 10. So if they're gaining 4 back, they're getting 40 HP. So they are regenerating as they're fighting.
Right. Well, yeah. So I guess so technically, if you destroy a head, if you deal 25 damage, technically you wasted all that stuff and only dealt it 5 damage.
Yep. Exactly.
That's crazy.
Only dealt it 5 damage, and it now has double the heads to fight you with. Not double the heads, but it has an extra head to fight you with. Okay, so then you might ask, how do you kill it? This is built into this multiple heads thing. So if all the heads die, the Hydra dies. So if you were to somehow cut them all off in one turn...
Or just kill them.
It would kill it.
Yeah.
Or just kill them. And the way you kill them is, and it says this in the rule, they only regrow their heads if they haven't taken fire damage. If you deal fire damage, any amount to the Hydra, it won't regrow its heads. And I will discuss that at least later on where the inspiration for that comes from. Spoilers, it's the Hercules versus the Hydra story, which is a cool one. Of course, mythology is always cool.
Mythology's great.
And that's everything. So really the gist of the Hydra is this big reptile with tons of heads, and because it has all these heads, it has all these feats, and then also they aren't just regular heads. If you cut one off, 2 more grow in its place. Classic Hydra.
So technically you could have an infinite amount of heads if you're...
Technically speaking, although this is not a magical monster, there's really nothing to suggest it is, except it's one of its creations. We'll get into it. There's two backgrounds for it. There's an evolutionary based one, and then there's a magic based one. But I would argue that it can't go to infinite heads. Its body can only support so many. And depending on the source, it will give you how many it can support.
So, you think 20 heads?
I heard or read the number 30 somewhere. 30. And I think 30 is fine.
30 attacks.
It's a lot of heads. And that probably, its spine ain't probably feeling too good. Although I'm sure its spine is kind of made for this sort of thing. But yeah, up to 30 is a number. Yeah, but yeah, technically infinite. Nothing in its stat block says it can't go above 30. So if you want to give it infinite heads, although that's not possible.
Kind Kind
Go
of
for it.
like in the Disney Hercules movie when he just keeps chopping them off, and then the heads are like,
Oh, yeah.
God, there were so many.
There were
like
so
literal
many.
thousands.
And that size. I don't have the sizes really locked in my
That's
mind.
gargantuan.
That's gargantuan. Okay.
That's gargantuan.
So
yeah,
perhaps
that's
if
a big boy.
you could base it off of how big.
I mean, think about like how I would think about it. Think about what's a good example? Have you seen I mean, that's probably gargantuan. But do you remember like the wolf from Rampage? Do you remember
Yes.
that movie? That's kind of like huge.
Oh,
that's
that
probably
seems-
how big he
It
is.
seems like bigger than.
I was thinking
Hydra.
of the crocodile, but the crocodile's freaking massive.
Crocodile's massive.
So yeah,
Nope.
like think about the wolf or the
I don't know my sizes, but I might disagree with that. I feel
30
like the
feet.
wolf would be gargantuan.
Well, I mean, gargantuan, I believe, is like 60 to 80 feet.
Okay.
So that's freaking massive.
We'll have to double check this.
Yeah, but-
anyway, its size it's big. It's a big monster.
He's big.
It's
yeah.
big.
And don't think you can decide, oh, I won't cut off its heads. Don't be that guy, because that's not what the... Basically, it's saying, like, let's say you shock it, one of its heads just drops dead or becomes limp.
No, yeah,
You-
this
you know,
the
so,
stat block explicitly says if 25 damage is done, one of the head dies. It
So-
does not say you can target
Yeah,
where.
I've had people where they were like, I don't cut off his head. I'm like, no, that's not how that works. He's like,
Yeah, it
but,
doesn't
but
work.
that's mythology. So how you get around that for DMs, you can just make it that like it's just too hard to attack its body
Its heads are wild
because
and
it'll
everywhere.
just heal on its body. So you have to like kill its heads. So I
No,
thought that was
yeah,
kinda cool
there's
way
a
to do
couple
it.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause you could have thick skin, which it could have.
It definitely has thick skin.
It is very regenerative. So if
it can
rivals
rivals trolls in regeneration. So.
right. So if it can regenerate a gigantic neck and head in a turn, then you can bet it's going to regenerate a cut on its body like instantly, like
Oh,
Wolverine.
yeah.
So that I
faster.
think that was a good way that
Yeah,
you did that.
yeah.
Okay, that is it for basics. That's it for stats.